Hey, what's up guys? Hope everyone's doing well. With the massive amounts of BS that's constantly being shoved down your throats and eyeballs by this world nowadays, it's important to understand how to reset your brain. Think of your brain as this chamber, and at the front of that chamber is everything you've been taking in for the past week or even month. It's important to filter out a lot of that garbage every now and then, so that you can reshift your focus on what you need to do. Whether we're aware of it or not, we're always trying to escape the reality of the present moment in the form of technology or digital media. And our constant need and craving for dopamine has exponentially increased, especially the past year with everyone being on the internet more than ever, and we're only barely just scratching the surface for the era of technology that we're entering. So the most general understanding of dopamine is that dopamine is a chemical that allows signals to pass through synapses, which are the spaces in between neurons, and those neurons carry information to our brains and muscles. And among the 4 pathways that dopamine travels through, the mesolimbic pathways is the one that receives specific attention as it attributes to addictive behaviors. Dopamine doesn't necessarily cause pleasure, rather it influences the brain's reaction to pleasure. When the brain releases an excess amount of dopamine, it shuts down the dopamine receptors, so that it can recreate the same feeling the brain signals this addictive desire when surrounded by stimuli. This stimuli is our environment around us, technology staring in our faces every day, etc. Willpower is definitely an important aspect of focus, but unless your willpower is ironclad, you're going to lose to the biological aspects of focus. See, we have a false reality and idea that we are the ones in control of what we want to consume. To a certain extent this is true, but every single platform has specific algorithms to completely counter our own will and essentially control you. Again, this is why ads pop up for things you were looking at the week before, or why the search perfectly predicts what you want in the first few letters. It's because they're watching your every move, finding the perfect way to distract you more and fulfill your dopamine craving or whatever stimuli. A dopamine detox is exactly what it sounds like, which is the removal of any activity that releases dopamine for a certain amount of time. It's like restarting your computer when it becomes too slow. A dopamine detox is a reset on your brain which allows your dopamine receptors to open up. It's actually a pretty simple concept when you actually think about it. The less you engage in these activities that increase your craving for dopamine, the more you're able to embrace more mundane day-to-day activities that are more important that you need to do and things you need to get done, and the things that are more beneficial towards you. You know, things like working out on a day that you don't feel like it, versus eating unhealthy and chilling on your couch or whatever. Or studying for that test, or starting that essay, versus scrolling social media for the next 2 to 3 hours. Most things that are harder that release less dopamine are almost always more beneficial towards us. And the activities that are easy and increases our craving for dopamine are almost always worse for us. I mean, it's just the way human beings are, right? We run towards comfort and run away from discomfort. And a dopamine detox basically slowly counters and breaks that cycle for craving of dopamine. It's the same reason why when we have something we need to do, right? We never want to start, and starting is like the hardest thing ever in that moment. It's always like a 10 more minutes or 1 more video or 1 more episode or I'll start tomorrow type of attitude. But then when you finally start, you get into the flow of it and it becomes easier and you wonder why you didn't start earlier. So like in my high school days, right, I would go to these phases where I'm doing so many things that feed my dopamine craving where it would be hard to start the simplest things. I swear, when I got home from school, either hanging out or playing basketball with friends, I'd watch Dragon Ball Z episodes until dinner. And then after dinner, I'm like, I'm too full, I'm too tired, I just ate. So I'll watch 2 more episodes. And then I'll be like, oh, but this episode was so good, just 1 more. And then I forgot, oh, I got a shower, so I do that. And then I feel tired after my shower, and then I watch another episode. I was constantly satisfying the craving for dopamine, and doing the smallest things like homework would take forever. And then all of a sudden it's 12 AM and I end up going to bed at 2 AM. And then I wake up at 6:30 AM to go to school. And that's how I end up sleeping through my first 2 periods. Hey, whatever, those classes were useless. There was this one marine biology class that I took in the morning, but I'll save that story for another day. See, our brains are wired to be more motivated towards things that release more dopamine and vice versa. The activities that release more dopamine are those with a reward. When we see an activity that gives no reward, those release less dopamine for us. And I think this is why it was so hard for me to do schoolwork, especially for some specific courses, because to me in the back of my mind I always thought, what's the point of this? And I'd like to say I was 80% right. But seriously, I couldn't think of a single day in class where I didn't think to myself at one point, this is so pointless, who cares? So for me, right, I saw no reward system, and maybe that was one of my vices. Whereas for, let's say, students that get A's all the time, they can see the reward system there for them. Because getting A's would mean getting good grades to go to college, which would translate to getting a good job, making a lot of money, right? Which is generally how most people view life. I didn't see it that way. To me, life was much different, much more. So I saw no reward system in a lot of things related to school. Which is why I always put off everything to the last day, like literally. And doing some schoolwork was like dragging my dead corpse to a finish line in a race I didn't even want to be in. See, our bodies have a condition called homeostasis, which basically seeks to keep our chemical conditions at a balanced level. When imbalances happen, our bodies adapt to that imbalance. This is why it's so hard to quit addictions, because those imbalances have shifted so far where that have become the norm. So if you drink a lot of alcohol or whatever, or in my case in high school, watch a lot of Dragon Ball Z, our brains get more and more used to high levels of dopamine, which becomes the new normal, making you develop a dopamine tolerance. Which is why it becomes so much harder to do these mundane activities that we don't see immediate rewards in. And keep in mind, we associate rewards with how we feel. So imagine those mundane activities, they feel even more boring than they already were. And if you have ADHD on top of that, that's tough. So in order to counteract this, or trick your brain into doing these more mundane activities, you gotta set aside an allotted time or day where you can pretty much starve yourself of those activities. And you can start easy, like once or twice a week, where you set aside all that time from those high dopamine activities, like going on your phone, computer, watching YouTube videos, Netflix, playing video games, eating unhealthy food, alcohol, etc. And replace that with low dopamine activities for one full day. Go for a walk, study, write a journal, read, reflect in your own thoughts. It's gonna be hard, but that's the point. And what you're doing is you're letting your dopamine receptors recover from the usual high intake. Just try to do everything you would consider to be boring or low dopamine behaviors. Do this once a week or every 2 weeks, whatever fits you best, and you'll slowly readjust and quote unquote trick your brain and basically reset your brain. For example, working out and going to the gym for the first week when you haven't gone in the past year is insanely hard. But like pretty much anything in life, the more you do it, the easier it becomes. Because the dopamine and reward system your brain perceives is shifting. Like that first week you go to the gym, you see no results. You're uncomfortable and it sucks and you want to go home. But the more you go, the more results you see, the better you feel. And then the easier it is to go because the reward, your quote unquote body, you're able to see and feel, which makes it even more easier to go because you have an incentive. It's actually pretty simple when you think about it. The most disciplined people have tricked their brain where all the dopamine comes from all those mundane activities, in which most people get no dopamine from. I think David Goggins is a good example of this. Like people like that never eat candy or drink soda so that they have no care for how it tastes. And if there's no interest for that taste, there's no reward system. So for them, it's easy to stay away from those high dopamine releasing food. The more you do of something, the more you engage in it, and the less you do of something, the less you engage in it. It's really simple yet not at the same time. But that's basically through conditioning themselves over time. Like we're always gonna crave dopamine, right? But it's your choice where you get it from. And the whole idea is basically to shift the paradigm as much as you can, to where the things that are beneficial towards you and harder to do release more dopamine by attaching reward systems to them. Anyways, I hope this helped in some way at least. If you liked the vid, leave a like, comment, or sub. And with that said, make sure you guys stay true. I'll talk to you guys real soon. Peace.